Hi, guys. It's me again. You're hanging with Mrs. Cooper. And we have a fun lesson planned for this week again, and it has to do with the coronavirus. Woohoo! All right, so last week we looked at the trend for the coronavirus in our state, in Ohio. We wanted to see if we were able to predict the number of cases that were going to occur the next day. And as you guys found, you were able to. You guys were accurate as can be. A lot of times you were only a few people off, honestly. You did an excellent job with that. So this week, we're going to expand on that. We're going to continue following that trend and see if it continues, because we've done an exceptional job in our state. We were originally supposed to peak at between 8 and 12,000 new cases per day. And now we've brought it all the way down to like 1,800 new cases per day. And it's probably going to drop even further because right now we've kind of hit this plateau where we're only increasing between about 330 and 370 new cases per day in our state. And that trend has been consistent for over a week now. So, I mean, we've had a few ups and downs here and there, but overall, it's been pretty consistent for the last week. So now this week, what we're going to do is compare our state to another state that is like us. We have done really well, and there are other states who have not done well. So we're going to look at their trends compared to our trends, and then also think about some of those things that may have affected why we're doing well and they aren't. So there's a number of things that can affect the data and the number of cases that we're seeing. And so the first thing that you're going to have to do is find out the population of each state that surrounds us, because population could have something to do with it. So first thing, population. Obviously, if it's a smaller state with less people, they're probably going to see less cases. So, for example, West Virginia. West Virginia does not have a lot of people in it compared to us. So their numbers are going to look very different than our numbers. Whereas Illinois, for instance, their numbers are actually really close to ours. I know they're not one of our surrounding states, but I'm bringing them up just because their numbers are very close to ours as far as population goes. But their coronavirus cases are actually a lot higher. So I want you to first look at population. The next thing that could have attributed to, a lower number of cases versus a higher number of cases would be population density. And population density is referring to the number of people living in a square mile. So, like Cincinnati, the city, is going to have a lot more people living close by one another. Whereas Williamsburg, where some of you live, people are more spread out. So there aren't as many people living in that location. So we're going to look at that. And that primarily, it has to do with the state, but that primarily is affecting certain cities throughout our country, like Detroit, Chicago, New York City. Like those are cities that have been getting hit hard. And it's probably, or one of the contributing factors has to do with population density. There's a lot of people close together in those cities. The next thing I want you to actually pay attention to is timing. And by timing, I'm referring to the timing of the government orders. So when did our governor close schools versus the other state's governor? When did they close schools? Or when did they close down restaurants? When did they advise us to stay home? Those kinds of things. So are those things affecting it? Of course they are. You know, we see that for sure in our state. The next thing is compliance, because the governor can issue all of those orders and maybe people aren't actually following them. In our state, I've seen some cell phone charts that show that in our state, we are actually doing a pretty good job with compliance, because cell phone companies are able to track like who's traveling where. And it is showing that we're doing a pretty good job with the stay-at-home order. The next thing, now, this one's travel. Now, what I mean by travel is like airports. You know, how many international airports does that state have compared to us? How many do we have? Is there a lot of international travel in that state? Like New York City, they have a ton of international travel. People are constantly going in and out of the country through the airport in New York. So that could be a contributing factor as to why they spiked so high so fast. Okay, another one is socioeconomics. If you don't know what socioeconomics is, that has to do with like your status, your financial status, basically. So with the socioeconomics, I've read a little bit about how that's contributing, and one of the things that is a contributing factor there is that with lower income areas, you see more people living in the same house, like multi-generational households. Maybe grandparents, parents, and children are living in that same household. So it's not just one family, it is multiple families living in that same place. And that could contribute potentially to how it's spreading. Also, with the socioeconomics, I read that, you know, it could have to do with who is able to work at home. Maybe those lower income people have to go out to work still because they're essential employees at grocery stores or at restaurants, fast food restaurants, or any type of takeout restaurant. They could potentially still, they're more vulnerable, I should say. They are more vulnerable, more at risk to catching this virus. Okay, and the last thing that I figured I'd throw in here is test availability. We don't have a lot of tests in Ohio, is what they keep telling us. And if we don't have a lot of tests, we can't test people. So we're being very selective about who we test. Are other states testing more people? Do they have more access to them? I don't know. So these are things that I want you to think about and look at when you're going through this. Okay, so let's get started. I decided that I am going to show you how to compare Ohio to Pennsylvania. I chose Pennsylvania because I figured you guys probably wouldn't, but also Pennsylvania is fairly close in size to us, so we can see the trend, the difference in the trend. All right, so let's go ahead and share my screen. All right, you guys should be able to see my screen at this point. I have all of these Excel spreadsheets down here for you guys. Depending on which state you choose to compare, that's the Excel spreadsheet that you will use. We're going to use Pennsylvania. So, okay. So I have Ohio's total number of cases compared to Pennsylvania's total number of cases right here. So another thing that could be contributing is how far along they are. You know, Pennsylvania is couple of days ahead of us because their first case came up on March 7th, whereas our first case came up on March 9th. So they are 2 days ahead of us in terms of collecting data. All right, so we're going to compare their total number of cases, and then we're going to compare the new number of cases. So let's start with the total cases. Let me copy and paste Ohio's data into Desmos. And I'm going to do these on the same graph so that you can see. So there's us. Us is in green. All right, and then right below that, I'm going to copy and paste Pennsylvania. And you can see that there is a big difference between us in green and them in blue as far as how we are increasing. So notice also, I do have to point this out now, that in green, our case, our state, Ohio in green, is going to be using X1 and Y1, and blue, which is Pennsylvania, is going to be using X2 and Y2. So when we write our formulas out, you are going to have to switch them depending on which one you're looking at. Okay, so let's take a look at us first. Y1 tilde AX1 cubed plus BX1 squared plus CX1 plus D. And you can see our trend is following this very nicely. Okay, so that is this purple model right here going through the green dots. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing down here, but this time I'm going to use Y2 and X2 because I want to use those points, the Pennsylvania points instead. So I'm going to do Y2 tilde AX2 cubed plus BX2 squared plus CX2 plus D. Their model is also pretty accurate and following very nicely. Let me see what we can find here. Okay, so you can see that their model, which is the black model going through the blue points, is much steeper than our model. Our model is much flatter, so we're doing a pretty good job at trying to flatten the curve. So this was the model that looks at the total number of cases per day. Now let's do the same thing, and I want to look at just the number of new cases each day. So this is how much it's increasing from day to day. So if we have 100 cases today and we have 500 cases tomorrow, that means that we went up 400 cases. It's how many new cases we're seeing. Okay, so let me pull that back up and we'll go to Ohio's new cases. Copy and paste that into Desmos. And then I'll do the same thing with Pennsylvania. Their new cases also. So you can see the number of new cases they're seeing per day is much, much higher than what we're seeing. We're seeing in the 300s and they're seeing in the thousands. Okay, so the green is us, the blue is them. Alrighty. Again, we'll take a look at those two different trends. And once again, notice that Pennsylvania, I'll be using X2 and Y2. And for Ohio, I'll be using X1 and Y1. They're completely different points, so you have to use different representation. Okay, so y1 tilde ax1 cubed plus bx1 squared plus cx1 plus d. Okay, so we are the purple again. And you can see that we are flattening out a lot. And then we're doing Pennsylvania with y2. y2 tilde ax2 cubed plus bx2 squared plus cx2 plus d. Their value, their r-squared value, isn't as high as ours, but neither one of them are super close to 1. But this is about as accurate, I think, as we're going to get. Let me shrink this a little bit, and I want you to pay close attention to these two curves. So our curve is a lot flatter than the Pennsylvania curve. They are seeing a much steeper slope there going up this mountain. It is looking at this point like maybe they might be peaking soon, but it's hard to say. And then ours, we're just staying so flat that it's hard to say what's going to happen, because they think that we're going to peak right around at this level up here that Pennsylvania is at, about that 1800 level. But we're staying so flat that maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe we'll get lucky and everyone will do what they're supposed to do. And we won't get up this high like Pennsylvania. Maybe we'll stay down here. That's the goal, right? So keep doing what you guys are doing. Stay home unless you need to go out. Some of you are working, like I said. So keep up the good work with whatever you're doing. Alrighty. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to give you an assignment again this week, like I did last week. You'll have to answer some questions. You're going to have to do a little bit of research also. I'm going to ask you to look up the populations of the 5 states that are surrounding us. You're going to choose the state that you want to compare us to based on which one you think that we're most like, I guess, and go from there. I will have that ready for you. So if you need any help, I will hold more online help sessions this week, and we can get together and have a little bit of math fun. Sounds fun, right? I knew it. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off here, and I will be talking to y'all soon. Happy Easter, guys.